You're listening to Indiana Jones and the Comics Crusade on the LONGBOX CRUSADE NETWORK. Hello and welcome to Indiana Jones and the Comics Crusade. I'm your host, Jared Albrecht, the Yard Sale Artist, and I will be taking you on an adventure with me as I index all 34 issues of 1983's The Further Adventures of Indiana Jones by Marvel Comics. On this episode, we will be taking a look at issue number 10. Issue 10 is cover dated October of 1983 with a script by Archie Goodwin and David Michelinie. Penciler is Dan Reed, inks is Danny Bulinati, the letterer is Joe Rosen, colorist is Bob Sharon, and the editor is Louise Jones. Here's a quick cover description. The cover is drawn by Howard Chaykin and inked by Bob Wycheck. The Marvel Comics Group banner is gone, and I don't think it's coming back. Indiana Jones stands pistol ready in his yellow corner box. The title logo is yellow with black highlights, and the main action depicts Indiana Jones holding on for dear life as he not only wing walks midair on a biplane, but attempts to avoid a native that's trying to kill him with a grappling hook. And now for a quick story synopsis. When we last saw Indy, he was dangling from the 23rd floor of a New York high-rise, about to get his fingers stomped by a Jovito's native warrior. He is spared that fate by a quick-shooting Marion. Although while pursuing his final attacker, Indiana does plummet off the building, but is saved by a trusty flagpole. Marcus receives a call offering to sell the idol back, but Indy must deliver the cash all the way down in Brazil. Clearly, this is more of a personal revenge for the mystery woman behind it all. And it's soon revealed that she is Ilsa Todt, brother of Ernst Todt, the creepy black trenchcoat-wearing Nazi from Raiders. Eventually, Indy escapes his captors for the big showdown on the biplane, where he crashes the plane, and possibly Ilsa, into the Amazon River. But only Indiana Jones survives, and he even walks away with the golden idol. All right, folks, welcome back to the Temple of Longbox, which is buried deep, deep underneath LONGBOX CRUSADE Studios. Joining us tonight, surviving all the traps on the way down here, is longtime friend of the show and war comic books expert, maybe all comic book expert, but really war comics expert. It is Kirk Spencer. Welcome to the Temple of Longbox, Kirk.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
You look good. You only got, it looks like a few burns, a couple of tears in your shirt. You must have done well. All those traps.
Well, I brought a change of clothes because those traps are nasty and they tear some clothes up.
Oh,
good thing I'd been thrifting.
My kind of guy. It's nice you like Kirk and I are friends. All right, Kirk, tonight on this episode, we're going to be talking about issue number 10 of Indiana Jones, Further Adventures of Indiana Jones by Marvel. First question for you. How did you come to Indiana Jones? And was this something you were reading back in the day in the 80s or something you came to later in life? But let's start with just how you came to Indiana Jones.
I believe I discovered Indy through lots of commercials, possibly the toys, but my first true following was the comic itself because I had not seen Raiders until later with we rented a VHS player from the video store and rented Raiders so I could see it. And I about wore that tape out that weekend.
So it was everything you hoped it would be.
It was everything I hoped it would be and more. It was all my loves of basically a war movie, even though it was set pre-World War II, but he's punching Nazis and saving the world. So he was right up my alley.
Oh, it sounds like it. You know, you're the first person, I think, on the show, we're 10 episodes in, to bring up the toys being a way in. And yeah, I had a few of those cool toys back in the 80s too.
I only had a couple of the figures themselves because for the most part, my focus was on G.I. Joe or Star Wars. But even though I hadn't seen Raiders yet, I couldn't resist some of the figures.
Indy, over here. Indiana Jones, at your service, Toad. Ah!
Indiana Jones and other action figures new from Raiders of the Lost Ark collection, each sold separately.
Watch him, Cairo, swordsman. Yeah, watch my swing. Yikes! All downhill from here, swordsman. You'll be sorry, Jones. Tricked you again. Toad.
Indiana Jones, Tote, and Cairo Swordsman action figures, each sold separately from Raiders of the Lost Ark collection, new from Kenner.
I don't think they made a ton of figures for that set either. I think it's just a handful, but I only had one or two. Like I had like Indy, maybe Belloc, or maybe that swordsman guy. I can't remember, but well, cool. So you were into the comics before you finally rented that VCR and saw the movie. Okay, so you've been reading this since it was on the spinner rack.
Since it was on the spinner rack, I started with issue 1, and at one point I had a subscription. And in fact, when this issue 10 arrived in the mail, I had a panic attack because as a young comic book consumer living on an allowance, cover prices were very important. And Marvel somehow sent me a Canadian price variant, which had a 75-cent cover price. And I freaked out thinking comics have gone up. They hadn't warned us. Here we go again. What titles am I going to drop? And when I saw the issue on the stands, because I had received it in the mail before I saw it on the stands, it still had the, 60-cent cover price at the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the heck? And I was so confused. And that's when my father taught me that Canadian stuff costs more. And he showed me in the fine print on the front page where it says like a single copy in Canada is 75 cents. I was like, imagine that.
Canadians, they're always messing with your head.
So I've collected Canadian price variants since then.
Don't take it personal, Brad. He's our Canadian guest who was on an earlier episode. Oh, well, that's awesome, man. See, you've already brought the toys. Now we got Canadian price variant stuff. That's why we have Kirk. This is why we have Kirk to the Temple of Longbox.
I'm just glad to survive the traps and tell my stories.
And I'm glad you brought the extra clothes, too. So it worked out for everybody.
Well, my mother taught me to do that. Shout out to Mom.
Shout out to the Lady Spencer. All right, let's get into Further Adventures Indiana Jones number 10. I've already done a cover description for the folks, but I haven't gotten your thoughts on the cover. I know you know your artist, so I know the minute you glanced at it, you knew that this was a Howard Chaykin cover, because I know that you know about Chaykin. Then what were your thoughts on the cover?
I like it. Now, I don't remember what I thought as a youngster. My only real memory of this issue as a youngster was the panic over the cover price. But when I saw that Howard Chaykin was going to be at Heroes Con this past year, I actually remembered his covers he did for this series. And I was like, I got to get some of those pulled out of the vaults and get them signed. And so that's what I did. Those were among my selections for Howard this year. I really like Howard's art. I really like his covers. And this is another Dynamite cover where, as a probably around 10 or 11 years old, I was like, oh my gosh, how's Indy going to survive this?
He's standing on the wing of a plane. Someone's throwing a grappling hook at him.
Right.
Yeah, Chaykin's got a real neat style. As I mentioned previously, this is inked by Bob Wycheck, which is interesting because last issue was a Chaykin, but it was inked by Terry Austin. So apparently Chaykin's just cranking out pencils for Further Adventures and just handing it to whomever at this point. So anything else about the cover that you like? You just like the energy? I know you like Chaykin's art. I know this about you. So I know in your head, you're just thinking, well, it's Chaykin.
Well, it's Chaykin, yeah. Now, I might have changed something different. If I was the art director, I may have given the pilot a pistol pointing at Indy and give him double the danger. But for 10 or 11 years old or whatever, you couldn't have asked for much more than here's our hero standing on the wing of a plane, which is already dangerous. And then here's this muscle-bound man throwing a grappling hook at him. And it's like, uh-oh. And on top of that, he's losing his hat. Like, Indy, you got to get the hat.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention that if you didn't. My favorite detail is the hat blowing off. It gives the cover a lot of energy.
Yeah, I can see detail. Next panel, grabbing the hat and losing his footing. And then he's hanging on the edge of the plane.
So you mentioned the cover price variant. I'm going to mention something that I mentioned in the cover description before you got down here. This is the first one in this series that doesn't have the Marvel Comics Group banner across the top. And I think this is where they just stopped doing it because I was looking ahead at a few more issues and they don't have the Marvel Comics Group banner across the top of it anymore. So, yeah, I always like that banner.
Yeah, it's a classic.
It makes me wonder if this is when they stopped all over Marvel. Like, this is the October 83 issue. I'm going to have to cross-reference that. It's probably something you know off the top of your head, but I don't.
I think there was an article probably in Marvel Age around this time explaining the change and how it was going to simplify things. And I was like, how is it simplifying? I mean, you could flip through a spinner rack and just see the top and go, well, that's Marvel, Marvel, Marvel. So
Good point.
I don't know how this simplified anything, but
that's why they should have had you on the payroll. All right, let's open it up. Get past the cover. Let's look at the insides. We got a story and we've got some art, and the floor is yours. Give me some of your highs, if you have lows. What are any of the lows? Just what are your thoughts, man? Let's see what you got on this here story.
Well, I really enjoyed it. I had not read this story in years. The only memory I had of it was the cover itself and then the cover price. So reading this to record with you was a real blast from the past. And I like the throwback villain. I don't want to offer any spoilers here. I like the tie-in to the Raiders movie. You can
spoil it. I spoiled it in the story description earlier.
Okay. Well, it's Tote's sister. She's brought the native tribe that Belloc is with in the beginning of Raiders to go after Indy. And it's kind of the big city jungle where they're on the high rise and Indy's in danger. And I really enjoy it. It juxtaposes beginning in the urban jungle and going to the actual jungle later on. It made me wish that I knew where the preceding issue was to break it out and read it and go back to the beginning. I've got to get organized someday.
Well, don't worry about it, because by the time your episode airs, episode 9 will have already aired. So you can just listen to that and go, oh, yeah.
That might do it. I might have to break down and listen to the podcast. Get all my details from the yard sale artist and his crew.
There you go. You did jump in on part 2 of a 2-part story. And as me and Rick was on episode 9, Rick Heineken from Unpacking the Power of the Power Pack, as we discussed, this is an interesting 2-parter because it is the most tied to Raiders, which was the only movie of the series that was out at the time, because it has the Jovitos natives. Last issue had Sala and Marcus and Marion. Is this issue where it's revealed in the last issue, Rick and I are like, who is this mysterious blonde woman?
Well, I'm always for a mysterious blonde.
I knew that would excite you. And
hashtag partial to blondes.
This is the issue where it's revealed that it's Ilsa Tote. And I did my work, ladies and gentlemen, behind the scenes, because I always bring a little segment. In fact, I forgot to do it last episode. Someone's probably going to call me out. But I won't forget this episode where I always find something in the comic that we're talking about, issue 10 in this case. I found a couple of things that echo into future movies that haven't come out yet. I have 2 of them for you in this one.
Okay.
In this one, we get the danger of the alligators or crocodiles. I can't remember which one it was, right? It's a tenuous connection, but there was a serious danger for alligators or crocodiles in Temple of Doom. They were at the bottom of the ravine where the bridge was. Right. And I was like, okay. But, that's tenuous at best because Indy didn't have to directly fight them in Temple of Doom. It was just a danger. But in this one, it's Ilsa Tote. And in Last Crusade, the betray girl who was actually a German Nazi girl's name was Elsa. We have Ilsa and Elsa. This is awfully close.
It's pretty close. I will count it.
A pretty blonde girl. Mm-hmm.
I mean, if Ilsa Tote looks anything like Allison Doody from The Last Crusade, then we are in good shape.
Howdy doody, says Kirk Spencer.
Yes, indeed.
All right, so you liked the story overall, and I do want to go back to something you did say, because I do listen when you talk, contrary to what I've told you in the past. I liked the mixture of, we had City Indy at the beginning, and you mentioned, then he goes kind of to the jungle, and then you get the, fight the crocodiles, and then you get the fight on the plane. So it's got that whole Indy vibe, the exotic location and the big action set pieces. So I wholeheartedly agree with you. It has a very Indy vibe. So was there anything else in the story that you wanted to talk about? Or while we got the book open, if that moves you into the art realm, feel free.
Well, I really enjoy that most of the story is centered around collecting a little idol, and that's a throwback to Raiders to me.
Yes.
And at the ending, we don't know what happens to Ilsa Tote. And that is pure comic book thing where you lay the groundwork and leave a door open for her return later on.
100%. I caught that too. They're like, oh, okay.
My guess, and I don't remember this for sure, but my guess as a young man reading this, I was like, I sure hope that blonde Nazi returns. I mean, if you're going to have a villain, you can't go much better than a Nazi in the first place, and why not make her a hot blonde while you're at it?
Right. It all falls together. I mean, it worked. We all saw it work in Last Crusade.
Yes, indeed.
So, yeah, I did like the very comic booky ending. They crash into what I think was the Amazon River Could have been a lake. Anyway, Indy's like, I'm totally crashing this plane. And he dives off. Like, see you later.
Yeah, I mean, now he has no doubt in his mind that he's going to survive this as well. There's like, even though this plane is just feet from the water, he's like, well, I'll just jump in here in these alligator-infested waters, and I'll be fine.
I'll be fine. And not only is he fine, he comes up with the idol. Get the idol, too.
Of course, at the end, he doesn't have his hat, so where's his hat?
Oh,
that harkens back to Howard Chaykin. He knew.
Oh, I didn't notice that. Now I feel sad inside.
Who was the editor? I bet they gave Howard the direction and said, he's losing his hat in this one, Howard. Don't mess this up.
It was Louise Jones, who will later become Louise Simonson.
Right on.
One more interesting thing about the ending, I think we mentioned this last episode with Rick, just for our listeners who are sort of going along this whole ride. My memory is, we're going to find out soon, but I'm pretty sure I'm right, that this story arc here, this is David Michelinie with Archie Goodwin. And I want to say right before this story arc was a Michelinie as well. I think it was.
I think he did a lot of writing for this series.
He's finally the guy. Yeah, he's finally the guy, because it's been a rotating cast of writers and artists since the whole thing launched. And then right around issue 8-ish or so, I think Michelinie comes in, and I think he's going to do a run.
Okay.
And that's where you see him planting. He created a new character named MacIver, who's like another archaeologist, kind of like Belloc, who's a foil for Indy. And we're going to see him again. I also don't remember if we're going to see Ilsa Toad again or not, but with this continuity from him, it wouldn't surprise me, because he is bringing a real continuity to it. Because for a while there, it was just sort of this creator's thoughts, and they've all been fine, but it's nice to get a long term.
Yeah. The name Dan Reed as the penciler, I don't remember that one specifically. It makes me want to think Lone Ranger and Britt Reed with Green Hornet. And I'm thinking that's probably not who drew the issue, but that's where my brain goes.
It's funny you should say that. You and I have been friends for way too long, because the next question I was going to ask you was, like, both Rick and I noticed on the last episode in the last issue, it was also drawn by Dan Reed. And we were like, it doesn't really ring a bell, but he's doing a great job. It's very Marvel House style. It looks really cool. And I was like, when Kirk's on, he'll know what else this guy has done, but kind of a mystery to you too, huh?
My main memories of this before I pulled this issue out for a reread was that we started off with Byrne and Terry Austin, and we end with Steve Ditko, and I'd completely forgotten about the people in between. So if you're listening to this and you're Dan Reed, I'm sorry. You did a great job on this.
I wholeheartedly agree. Interestingly enough, as I look up Dan Reed just on Comic Art Fans,
right,
a lot of people are posting Indiana Jones art. I actually see a little Transformers art. I actually see a page from this book, by the way. Oh, while we're talking about his art, how cool was that? So almost full page he did of the biplane, like zooming over like that.
Oh, I love that. If I was going to choose a page from the issue, that might be the one I would go for. If I was, if some art dealer had the entire issue, because it's just super cool. It harkens back to my War Comics. It looks like something Russ Heath would have done. And then you have Indy and the Hot Blonde down in the bottom panel, so you can't go wrong with that.
Can't go wrong. Yeah, it's got the Kirk Spencer seal of approval. So yes, it looks to me like everything I'm looking at here is like either Indiana Jones or Transformers. So I think this is what his guy's doing. I'm sure he's probably done a few other things, but hey, folks at home, we did a little research for you.
We tried.
And here's what we came up with: Indiana Jones and Transformers.
Tag us on Twitter if you find more of his work.
Absolutely. But he's good. I think he's really good. I think his style fit well in this book. As mentioned, that we both love the biplane page.
And he did a good job with, like, say, the crocodiles. Or, as my dad would say, everybody would have called them gators if they were from the USA, even though if they were out of country, they probably were not gators, they were crocodiles. Because there was a Sergeant Fury cover where Sergeant Fury is battling one, and my dad's like, he's dumb. That's a crocodile. Okay, Dad.
Sure. How hard must it have been for these artists, like, to draw that awesome biplane or a gator or a crocodile? They didn't have the internet, man. They had to, like, go to the library to pull out reference.
Right. People forget that. You couldn't just look up reference on your phone back then. You had to know this stuff, right? Or have something to draw reference to.
All those little 3-minute sketches I do for when the kids come up to my table, I'd be dead in the water if it was 1986.
I know. You'd have to carry around like, a little cheat file with pictures of everything, maybe an old Sears catalog to go with it.
Yeah, I'd have like a little folder that has like 20 drawings of different superheroes in it that I could do pretty good. It'd be like, what kid, pick from one of these 20.
Yeah, You get your choice, but it's got to be one of these.
It's got to be one of these because I don't have the internet, kid.
Better hope for good Wi-Fi in the convention center.
That's right. Man, how the times have changed. All right, so we've talked about the cover. We've talked about the story, the art. Seems like you got a lot of highs. Was there anything in there that you're like, I don't like that so much, or was it all pretty good for you?
It was all pretty good for me. I mean, when I first read it, I thought it did a good job of letting me know where we were at, even though this is part 2 of 2, and I hadn't read part 1 in 40 years probably. So, comics back then were a lot easier to drop into in the middle of something, and they would kind of coax the reader along. A lot of times now it's like, if you miss it, tough luck, kid. Hope you get the trade.
Yeah, pick up the trade, kid. I agree, by the way. As far as, we talk about highs and lows on the show. I didn't really have any lows either. I thought it was pretty good. I had no beef with it.
I mean, if I was the kid spending 60 cents on this, I would feel like I definitely got my money's worth. And I'm an adult who just spent like $7 on a Canadian price variant so I didn't have to look for the old one, so I could read this, and I feel satisfied.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you were familiar with the movie and seen the movie, this has so many tie-ins with it. It would definitely feel, I think, welcoming.
Yes,
in 1983. The only other thing inside this book is ads, and you and I talked before recording, and I said, hey, you can pick whatever ad you want to talk about, and you picked a double-page spread ad. I think, and I can't say for sure because it's been a while, I had Jim Meal on a previous episode. I want to say he was on episode 4-ish. He might have picked the same one for obvious reasons, since he is Jim the Joe Junkie. But I'll let you go ahead and reveal what the ad is, even though I've given the clue, and tell me what you think.
It is a double-page ad. I believe it's MD Bright art, but I can't swear to that. But it's Cobra is looking for a few bad men on page 1, with the Cobra commander holding a globe with a cobra wrapped around it, and Duke is on the other side saying G.I. Joe is looking for a few good men, and it's advertising the G.I. Joe video game from Parker Brothers that is coming soon.
In each of us, there is both good guy and bad guy. In the G.I. Joe video game, you can be G.I. Joe, fighting for right and justice.
Or the supervillain Cobra, battling other players with laser blast and venom bombs.
You can defend, attack, save, destroy. Play the courageous hero.
Or the unspeakable villain.
The choice is yours. G.I. Joe, new from Parker Brothers.
And I had this game, and I don't remember much about it other than I sucked at it.
I think we all did. This is the age of Atari where you're just happy to have something to play. Like, everything was hard.
Well, and, everything's pretty much just bricks, and you're still like, it's G.I. Joe, though.
Yeah, it's totally a Joe square fighting a Cobra square.
Yeah, I mean, that's a green brick. Obviously, that's Duke.
You had to have imagination. You had to have patience.
Yeah, it didn't have a lot of, as for graphics, but a lot of the box art and the comic book ads were wonderful.
Oh,
I mean, I couldn't have told you the name of the game or who made it, but I can remember this ad as one of my favorite comic book ads. And, because around 1983, I would have been all in on G.I. Joe. So seeing this is like Viagra for my little kid nostalgia. It just grows and gets me excited. I look at it and I'm just like, oh, yeah.
I don't know if I'd phrase it like that, but I agree with you. I agree with you. I don't think I've ever played the Atari G.I. Joe game. I've fiddled with the ones on Nintendo, on NES. It was like 89 and 90, I think they came out. But this 83 game, I've seen the ads a million times. I've always wanted to play it, but I just don't think I ever came across it. I had friends who had Ataris and stuff, but none of us ever had this game. So I'm jealous of you.
I still have the box, but I don't know where the actual cartridge is. My guess is I loaned it to a friend who never returned it, or my cousin stole it. Those are usually the two options.
Noted. Well, awesome, man. Is there anything else we need to cover before you take your treacherous journey back from the Temple of Longbox?
Well, since you mentioned that the G.I. Joe ad has been used, I would also like to mention that there is a Kool-Aid video game offer, and you could get this game for free with 125 Kool-Aid proof of purchase points. And my mother had saved all our Kool-Aid proof of purchase points. So when I saw this ad, I was like, we've got to have that many, and I can get this game for free.
Yeah.
And I go through the drawer, and I think maybe we had 15, which seemed like an awful lot looking in the drawer. But when you're counting up points to get 125 of them, I'm like, no, I'm not even close. This sucks.
Somebody get me some more Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I wonder who, if anyone ever sent in to get that thing.
Well, they did offer a secondary option of only 30 points and $10, and you had to make your check payable to the video game offer. But I wanted this sucker for free because $10. I mean, comics were 60 cents back then. That would have been a small fortune.
Right. Yes. All right, my man. Do you want people tracking you down? And if so, let people know where they can find you on the internet.
I am on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. I'm most active on Twitter, and I'm at Big Five Army. Feel free to tag me in Indiana Jones posts and war comics and just comics and food in general. Hungry Kirk does have to eat.
Hashtag Hungry Kirk. And thank you so much for being here, Hungry Kirk. I appreciate your time, and thanks for coming down to the Temple of Longbox.
Well, thanks for having me and not putting out the deadly traps, just the difficult traps.
I take it easy on you.
I appreciate it. I'm an old man, you know.
You can find me at Yard Sale Artist on X, Facebook, and Instagram. It's all at Yard Sale Artist. You can check out my artwares at www.theyardsaleartist.com. And of course, we'd love for you to check out the Longbox Crusade in all its locations. We are at Longbox Crusade on X, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You name it, you can probably find us out there at Longbox Crusade. Of course, you can call and leave a voicemail. 707-532-5269, 707-532-LBOX. We'd love to hear from you. And this is one of our shorter shows, so I will just say thank you to all the Patreon members out there. Our Crusaders Club members are the best, and they keep this stuff going. Thank you so much. I look forward to reading your names on a longer episode in the near future. With that, thanks for joining us again down here in the Temple of Longbox, and we will see you soon.
We're named the dog, Indiana.
The dog? You are named after the dog?
Got a lot of fond memories of that dog. What did you find, Junior? Junior? Dad? Geez, what does it always mean? This Junior. What's his name? Henry Jones Jr. Like Indiana.
May we go home now, please?